Sorry. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Martin Warnes, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I will be chairing the meeting. To begin the meeting, there are a few housekeeping matters. Action in the event of emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening. If an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when not speaking. I will ask members and officers to introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Good evening everyone, Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward and Vice Chair of the committee.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Kayleigh Rippingale, Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Lee Tate for Prettygate Ward.
Councillor Will Calverley, Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Mick Spindler, Shrub End Ward, substituting for Tracy Arnold.
Councillor Catherine Spindler, Saints Ward.
Councillor Mark Gocher, Castle Ward.
Councillor Robert Davidson, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Councillor Jackie McLean, Markstown Lane Ward.
Philip Morton, Planning Officer.
Daniel Cooper, Planning Officer.
Lucy Mondon, Development Manager.
Simon Cairns, Head of Planning.
Madeline Molosmo, Democratic Services Officer.
Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. We will have a break at 7:30 p.m. and every 90 minutes afterwards, should that be necessary. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. Whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, unlike certain licensing functions carried out by the authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies, reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure, rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these decisions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek judicial review or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authority's code. We'll move on to item 2, apologies, for Councillor Arnold, who is being substituted by Councillor Mick Spindler, who's already informed the committee of that. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I can see none. Okay, thank you. Item 4, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Item 5, have your say. If anyone has a petition they wish to present to me on any of the items on the agenda this evening, please do so now. Item 6. Sorry, you do have a petition, do you? Right, could you speak to my clerk, and then we will be able to determine whether it is, rather than raise it in public at this point, okay? Thank you. So we'll move on to item 6, which is minutes for confirmation. And I'll invite councillors to confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of February 2026 are a true and correct record. Okay, Councillor Tate and Councillor Cavalier, you are concurring, are you? Right, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Item 7, I will read out the applications and the speakers on the list, okay? 7.1 is Land of Fox's Corner, Halstead Road. It's an outlined application for the erection of 250 residential dwellings, public open space and associated works. Approval is sought for the principal means of vehicular access arrangements from Halstead Road. Internal access and all other matters are reserved. The officer's recommendation is for approval. Presenting officer will be Lucy Mondon, and public speaker against will be Councillor Mike Lambert. Public speaker for will be Owen Weaver, the planning manager for Richborough, and we have the visiting councillors, Councillor Naylor, and the clerk will read out a written statement from Councillor Sunnox. Item 7.2 is Land off Rowhedge Road, Colchester. This is outline planning application for the erection of up to 75 dwellings, including affordable housing, public open space, landscaping and sustainable drainage systems, commonly known as SUDs, and vehicular access point from Rowhedge Road. All matters are reserved except the means of access. The recommendation is to approve subject to legal agreement and conditions, and the presenting officer is Daniel Cooper. There are no public speakers against, and the public speaker for is Maria Jabba of Gladstone Developments, and visiting councillors Scottis and Lilly will speak. 7.3 is 5 King's Head Court, Colchester. This is an application for the removal or variation of condition 1 following grant of planning permission. Recommended for approval. Presenting officer is Phil Morton. There are no public against speakers. Public for is Clementine Saniaolo, and I have Councillor Kirby Taylor down to speak, and possibly Councillor Kafoglu, although I understand they're deciding between whether they both want to speak or whether one of them want to speak. Okay, thank you. So we carried out site visits. They were carried out today following requests from Councillors Naylor, Scordis and Kafoglu, and they were conducted earlier in the day on all 3 which were attended by Councillor Davison, Councillor Spindler and myself. Okay, so we'll move to 7.1, Land off Fox's Road, and can I invite Lucy Mondon to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Yes, as mentioned, this is an application that seeks outline permission for the erection of up to 250 residential dwellings, along with public open space and associated infrastructure. All matters are reserved for later approval, other than access from Halstead Road, which has been submitted in full detail. This is the application site outlined in red. It fronts onto Halstead Road, which you can see at the south of the application site. There's an existing farm track that runs north-south through the site. It's also a public right-of-way, which I'll show you in a moment. I've indicated the settlement boundary for 8 Ash Green in the thicker black line. And just at this point, councillors, to note that there is also an amendment sheet that accompanies the committee report. The amendment sheet details assessment in relation to heritage assets, and apologies, those assessments were carried out, but the details were not included in the original report, so it's all set out in the amendment sheet. With that in mind, I've indicated on this plan, circled in blue, the listed buildings in the vicinity of the site. So to the northeast, you have Fiddler's Farm. To the south, a property called Mantills. To the southwest, Green Farmhouse, and then to the west, Old Hill House. These are all Grade 2 listed. You'll also see in the amendment sheet reference to Ford Street Conservation Area. That's located further to the northwest of the site, and you can just see that in the top left-hand corner of this aerial photograph here. So this aerial photograph, just to show the site in more context, I've indicated the site outlined, circled in red. Immediately east of the site is a relatively new residential development, and then alongside part of the eastern boundary and extending north beyond the site is Fiddler's Wood, which you'll see referred to in the committee report. That's the ancient woodland. Just a map here to show the public right-of-way network. These are all shown in blue. Again, I've just indicated the site circled in red. So the farm track that runs through the site is a public right-of-way. It leaves the site at the northern boundary and continues as a farm track all along the western boundary of the woodland. There's also the public right-of-way also runs along the northeastern corner of the site and then enters into the woodland and then continues out onto Fiddler's Hill. This map's quite useful. It shows some of the existing tracks in the woodland, although I would point out that it is all private land. Immediately east of the woodland is Fiddler's Farm and a series of light industrial units, and then to the south and to the east of the site is the more recent development that I mentioned a moment ago. Another thing to point out is the primary school, which I'm just indicating is to the right-hand side of the slide. Final map to show you, just to show the site in a much wider context. I've circled the site here in red. You've got the main village of Oldham circled in green, and then 8 Ash Green, Fordham Heath circled in blue. The plan's a little bit small on the screen, but Fordham is located just here. Ford Street, indicating with the pointer. You can also see West Burgolt, main built-up area of Colchester, Copford and Marks Tay as well. I'll just go through some videos of the site. There's 5 videos I'll show you, 3 of which are along the frontage of the site to give you an idea of the immediate context, and then there are 2 further videos from within the site, and hopefully the technology will work for us. So this first video is right over to the eastern side of the site. I'm standing on the opposite side of the road looking east, so these are existing properties. You have the relatively recent development, and then the application site is coming up here on the right-hand side of the road behind the clipped hedge. You have Bullbanks Farm on the left-hand side. Speaking of that newer development, just some photographs of the shared boundary. The top photograph is looking north to the woodland, and the bottom photograph is looking towards Halstead Road. Second video, we're now standing at the entrance to the farm track that heads on through the site. So currently looking east and then looking across Halstead Road at Bullbanks Farm, the farmhouse building, over to the west, and then across the site as a whole. There's the woodland, the newer development, and then back to where we started. Final video on the frontage. This is on the very southwestern corner of the site, again looking east to start with. Looking across Halstead Road, there's a group of properties here. Then we have Fox's Lane, and then looking over to the properties that are to the west of the site. So just 2 more videos. This is as we're walking into the site now. We're walking along the farm track, which is a public right-of-way, currently looking north. You can see the site is relatively flat, but it does slope down as you approach the northern boundary of the site, and then the land slopes further as you enter the Colne River Valley slopes beyond. So looking north, across to the woodland, that's the recent development, over towards Halstead Road. Continuing along, there's the group of buildings you saw in the video a moment ago. This is the western boundary. Then then finishing up looking north again. Now we're standing at the northern boundary. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide that the farm track continues off-site and then carries on along the edge of the woodland. So just looking north, the public right-of-way extends around the northeast corner of the site and then enters into the woodland at this point. Again, just circling around the site to see it from the aspect of standing on that northern boundary, looking over to the west. And then back to the northern boundary once again. I've also included some wider views. These are viewpoints taken from the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment. The assessment includes quite a number of views, but I've just selected some to show some of the wider context. The views are all taken from public vantage points. There'll be highway, roads, or public rights of way. Some viewpoints from public rights of way are completely obscured due to the proximity of hedgerows and trees, but I've selected some of the wider views, as I mentioned, just so you can see the wider context. So this first image, in the map in the left-hand corner of the slide, I've indicated where I'm pointing here, where the view is from. So it's to the northeast of the site, approximately a kilometre or so away from the site, indicated on the image. It's beyond that bank of trees that you can see there. This second image is taken from the northwest, about 1.3 kilometres away from the site. Again, the site will be viewed in those distant views. This image is taken approximately 900 metres from the west of the site. You can really see the sloping landscape in this image, but again, the site would be further in the distance there. This viewpoint is from the public right-of-way to the south of the site, and here the dark buildings is Bullbanks Farm, which you saw in the videos. You can also see the orange rooftops of the existing properties that you saw in the first video, so it gives a good indication of scale, and the site would be located behind the darker buildings of Bullbanks Farm, essentially. And then finally, just a view from Green Lane to the southwest of the site, just indicate with the pointer here. This is essentially the road as if you're coming from Oldham Village. So as an outline application, there is limited details in terms of the proposals, but there are certain parameter plans that can be considered. So this first plan is a land use and access plan. It shows the main developable areas as well as the landscaped areas. You may not be able to see on the slide, but in terms of the key, I just wanted to clarify that the key refers to landscaping and open space, including children's play areas, footpaths, etc. But just as a point of clarity, the woodland buffer that we would be looking to secure along this eastern edge, conditions would stipulate that there would be no pathways through there, so it would be densely landscaped to make a buffer, other than the existing public right-of-way that comes along that northeastern corner of the site. So there's pedestrian access points on the eastern boundary, northern, and shown on the southern boundary. You have a swathe of open space through the site as well, and a northern landscape buffer. To the south, there's a red arrow, which is for the vehicular access from Halstead Road, which is the element of the proposal that has been submitted in full. So these are the access drawings, shows visibility splays and enhanced footways. The Highway Authority has recommended a condition that would widen the footways along Halstead Road for the entirety of the site frontage, and also for there to be 2 new bus stops in the vicinity of the site, one on the northern side of the road and one on the south. This is a landscape design coding plan. It essentially builds on that land use and access plan that I showed a moment ago, but it has developed a few features. Again, a caveat with regards to the key on the drawing that there would be no footways on the woodland buffer. It shows an enhanced landscape buffer to the north, and then you have landscaping also to the east as well. The public right of way to be retained through the site, and then you have these landscape visual cones which shows visual breaks in the development. This is a development density plan, so showing that there would be some higher density within the centre of the site, but the northern, eastern and western boundaries of the developable area would be at a lower density. And then similarly with the storey heights plan, up to 2 stories around the entire periphery of the developable area, and then potentially up to 2.5 stories in the central area. This is an indicative rendering, an image, just to give you an idea of how the development could look. So it does show that central area of open space, landscaped buffers to the edges of the site as well. And then just to point out that the conditions would require a denser planting along that woodland buffer, but essentially just gives you an indication of how the development could look. And in a similar fashion, this street view image on Halstead Road, just to give an idea of how the development could look, properties fronting onto Halstead Road and the retained public right of way that would extend through the site as well. So the officer recommendation is for the application to be approved, subject to conditions and legal agreement in order to secure necessary details and mitigation measures. An important consideration is the planning balance and also the tilted balance, as the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and as a consequence the adopted local plan is out of date with regards to housing policy. Just to note that whilst the housing policies are out of date, other policies in the local plan do remain relevant, and you will have seen that the committee report covers these matters. And for clarity, the ongoing local plan review carries very minimal, if any, weight at this stage, so decision making does need to be undertaken in accordance with MPPF policies and the adopted local plan where relevant. So moving on to just to explain the tilted balance, the MPPF is clear that where the policies which are the most important for determining the application are out of date, local planning authorities should grant permission unless there are matters relating to MPPF protected areas or assets of particular importance that provide a strong reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against MPPF policies taken as a whole, particularly with regards to sustainable locations, effective use of land, securing well-designed places and providing affordable homes individually or in combination. So the committee report sets out that the tilted balance is engaged, and I don't want to regurgitate what's in the committee report, but as a broad summary and considering the amount of weight to be applied in the planning balance, in terms of harm, the report details the conflict with the spatial strategy, and this has limited weight given the housing land supply position. The impact of the development on landscape character carries moderate weight, as does the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. Moving on from that, there would be less than substantial harm in respect of heritage assets, and the development would not cause the loss or deterioration to the ancient woodland. There are also no issues with regards to flood risk, contaminated land, highway matters or amenity, and financial contributions would be secured in order to mitigate the impact on services and facilities, including healthcare and education. So then turning to the benefits of the scheme, these are set out in the report. There's economic benefits, green infrastructure, ecological benefits, biodiversity net gain, etc. And these carry moderate weight in support of the application. And then the delivery of market housing and affordable housing carries significant and substantial weight in the planning balance. So taking these matters into consideration, the areas of harm are not considered to significantly or demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme, either individually or in combination, such that the application should be approved in accordance with the MPPF under paragraph 11D. Thank you. I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Lucy. So I'll now invite speakers, and I'll invite Councillor Mike Lambert, Chair of Oldham Parish Council, to come and speak to the committee, speaking on behalf of Oldham and 8 Ash Green Parish Councils. You have 3 minutes once you press the red button, and the bell will go after 1, and after which you'll have 1 minute in which to conclude. Just so you're aware, I'll probably be quite tight on the time. So if you could try and accommodate that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening. Both parish councils object in the strongest terms to the application at Fox's Corner, but that does not mean we oppose any or all development. Indeed, Ash Green has made positive efforts to promote and consult on alternative sites that would be better for our communities, but this could be undermined by tonight's decision, creating confusion and frustration. We understand NPPF guidance regarding tilted balance and current government pressure for new housing, but fundamentally disagree with conclusions in the officer's report on the impact and harm, not just on the valued landscape of the Colne Valley, but on traffic conditions on the A1124 and at junction 26 of the A12 and on the ancient woodland, and also on the site's poor relationship with the existing villages and the significant loss of good agricultural land. The site is not sustainable development for the purpose of applying the presumption in favour in NPPF paragraph 11. It is isolated, will be wholly car dependent, with no services or employment close enough to avoid travel by car, no safe cycling routes, and only an hourly and unreliable bus service. The application elongates the built-up area of 8 Ash Green, merging it with Oldham. This is a very large site, nearly 10 acres, not a small infill or rounding off. 250 homes here will mean as many houses on one site as there are in the whole village of Oldham, altering its character forever. The report is misleading, giving inadequate weight to the ongoing concerns of statutory and other key consultees. Highways England are not satisfied the scheme can mitigate impacts on junction 26, which is at capacity now. Essex County Place Services remain concerned that the landscape impact has not been adequately mitigated. The Forestry Commission have outstanding concerns, and Woodland Trust object to the impact on ancient woodland at Fiddler's Wood. The report suggests that individually these issues are not decisive in reaching a decision. In doing so, it fails to reach a proper conclusion on the cumulative impact of these various harms which cannot be mitigated by conditional section 106. If you turn to para 17.3 of the officer's report, NPPF 11D2 makes it clear the presumption in favour does not apply if the adverse impacts, taken as a whole, significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and they do. The application is piecemeal and premature because it preempts the local plan and can take no account of the off-site infrastructure required to mitigate the cumulative effect of emerging sites along the 1124, amounting to 700 new homes, putting further strain on the local highway network. And on these issues, we concur with Councillor Sunnock's statement that will come later. Approval tonight sets a precedent for further inappropriate residential development in neighbouring villages, regardless of the severity of harm on and impact on local communities. In summary, there are strong grounds to refuse this application, and we urge the committee to have the courage to make the right decision, not just for our 2 parishes, but for all the villages surrounding Colchester. Thank you.
Thank you. Near perfect timing. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will now invite Owen Weaver for the applicant to come and speak. Once you press the red button, you have 3 minutes. The bell will go after 2, and I will be reasonably tight on the time. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 250 dwellings on the western edge of 8 Ash Green, of which 30% will be affordable. The site is identified as a draft residential allocation in the emerging local plan and is considered suitable for the delivery of 250 homes within the Regulation 18 consultation document. The officer report is clear that Colchester City Council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and the tilted balance is therefore engaged, which means that planning permission should be granted unless adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The following clear benefits weigh in favour of granting consent. The proposed development would deliver a policy-compliant 30% affordable housing, which would equate to around 75 dwellings and comprises substantial benefit by reducing the number of households on the housing register, which currently stands at around 4,000 households. It will provide a range of house types and sizes, including homes suitable for downsizers, first-time buyers and families. It will deliver improvements to the public rights-of-way within the site, and it will provide publicly accessible open space that achieves at least a 10% gain in biodiversity. It will generate jobs during the construction period and the creation of additional expenditure in the local area once occupied. The applicant has also agreed to several significant financial contributions, including towards healthcare facilities at Tollgate Medical Centre, education and improvements to Oldham and 8 Ash Green village halls. The landscape design coding document has been prepared to establish layout and landscaping parameters for future development of the site, and a further review in support of a reserve matters application is secured by condition. The document includes a provision of a 30-metre buffer to neighbouring ancient woodland and a minimum 30-metre wide landscape buffer to the north of the proposed houses. Development parcels have been designed in a way which retains views out of the site to the north, whilst tree planting within the northern buffer would mitigate any impacts on views from across the valley. Further negotiation with Place Services Landscape will take place during the termination of a reserve matters application. The applicant has worked with officers at Colchester City Council and Essex Highways to agree a suitable and safe access arrangement, as well as incorporate sustainable travel initiatives to reduce the reliance on private vehicle use, such as the provision of 2 bus stops on Halstead Road. The officer report highlights the availability of services and facilities within 8 Ash Green, which can all be accessed within a short walk. There are no consultee objections in respect of highway capacity and safety. The proposed development aligns with the requirements of the emerging allocation and will provide much needed affordable and market housing in a sustainable location, whilst delivering a range of benefits outlined earlier. In conclusion...
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I'll now invite the visiting councillor, Councillor Naylor, to come and speak. You have 5 minutes, which begins when the red button presses. The bell will go after 4, and I will be reasonably tight on time. Please go ahead.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully my 5 minutes begins now rather than before. Thank you. I've asked for that particular slide to be put up because I actually think it's misleading. If you know that area, the Halstead Road, you'll know that Oldham isn't this tiny hamlet which is limited to the green centre. In fact, I travel that road often, and you will know that where the red ring is, the housing for Oldham actually begins right next to that red ring, because like most villages, the actual settlement pattern is outside of the centre as well. So I think it's really important to bear that in mind. So the report that's in front of you notes that it's 900 metres from the centre of Oldham village, and that's the point I want to make. It really isn't, because actually Oldham proper, the Oldham houses begin next to the proposed site. This committee and I have always held neighbourhood plans as being sacrosanct and preeminent when considering applications. This application sits outside the 8 Ash Green neighbourhood plan and directly contravenes its policies. The village envelope stops, as it's been explained, but this site will in effect coalesce Oldham village with 8 Ash Green and expand Oldham village in a way that is not envisaged by the residents or the parish council. I think that's really important. And also, if we look at 8 Ash Green's neighbourhood plan, they engage in the process thoroughly, and they've said the overriding wish of the village is to remain a sustainable, quiet rural parish, which is part of the Colne Valley. particularly point out that they've accepted 150 dwellings in the current plan, and that represents 22% uplift in the present housing stock for 8 Ash Green. So we've already heard that it will more than double Oldham's village, but it will also represent a total of 60% development from when this neighbourhood plan was first set out. The 8 Ash Green neighbourhood plan says the vision for 8 Ash Green is it should remain a small village in a rural setting. It's got Coalescence Environment Policy 1, EP1. This is actually in clear conflict with the coalescence policy. We already know the A1124 is virtually to standstill every day, and obviously this will add more traffic to a spine road straight into the A12. I don't intend to rehearse every single harm that's individually listed, as members will have read that for themselves in the papers. If we imagine for every harm a clear black dot is made, the ancient woods, which the Woodland Trust have objected to on the grounds of impact, and they are the experts in this, the valued landscape, and the merging of villages that breaks a long-held agreement that should not happen. But the report strangely stops short of joining these dots together, which would illustrate to you the cumulative harm that's represented here that significantly outweighs any benefit, in my view. And if, having read this report, I feel it is an error that the harms have not been considered cumulatively and in the totality in the way that they really should, actually, if we were taking the spirit of the MPPF seriously. And paragraph 11D1 provides for you to refuse this application if you agree that the totality of harms is significantly outweighed the benefits. I just want to say I support Councillor Lambert and Councillor Sunnux's comments to the committee. I think, I just want you to think about that. You have the power, as this committee, MPPF 11D1, to refuse this. I think there has been, with respect to officers, a serious lapse of not explaining the cumulative harms, and that is a significant point on which this committee can refuse this application. It is a landmark application, it will be a landmark decision, and you will be setting a precedent for every single neighbourhood plan to be overturned and ignored on coalescence grounds. So please think about that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will now invite Madeline to read a statement from Councillor Sykes.
Okay, hopefully I won't have to ring the bell on myself. So, this is a statement from Councillor Sykes. I'm concerned about the application for 250 new homes at Fox's Corner, which is one of many speculative applications which the Council is likely to receive while the new local plan is still emerging. I have one simple point to make. Planning committee members can reasonably conclude, if they so wish, that the application should be refused because the development would have unacceptable impacts and the necessary mitigation has not been secured through Section 106. This statement can be backed up by two pieces of evidence which we already have. We don't have to wait for the new plan to be adopted. One, the infrastructure audit shows that 800 million of expenditure is needed over 15 years, equivalent to £40,000 per dwelling. Two, the new mark viability evidence shows that larger developments, such as this one, can afford £25,000 per dwelling in off-site infrastructure contributions. Ideally, an application of this scale will be accompanied by draft Section 106 heads of terms so the committee has the full picture. In this case, it only has an officer's report listing a number of off-site contributions that the Council will seek in future negotiations, amounting to approximately £14,300 per dwelling. Members don't know the outcome of negotiations or the terms on which the various contributions will be paid over. Members do know that if they continue collecting at £14,300 per dwelling, when £25,000 is affordable and £40,000 is needed, we will end up with substantial infrastructure shortfalls. Thus, the harms substantially outweigh the benefits. It will be reasonable for committee members to ask for a deferral until they can see draft Section 106 heads of terms prepared by the applicant, offering off-site infrastructure contributions totalling about £25,000 per dwelling. If this is unaffordable, the applicant should submit supporting viability evidence. I hope that the committee will understand the significance of this point and start taking a much tougher line on the Section 106 and on this and other speculative applications.
Okay, thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite members, the committee members, to ask any questions to discuss the proposal, and then I will ask the officers to respond to questions. So we're getting responses in full. Okay. So anyone that wishes to speak, have you indicated to my vice chair? Right, Councillor Gocher so far. So if anyone wants to speak whilst Councillor Gocher is, please indicate. I've got Councillor Davison indicating. Councillor Gocher.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, here we go with tilted balance. I've read the report and I was unable to go on the site visit, but I have made extensive use of Google Maps today, just to reinforce what I knew already. My concern here is, well, it's numerous. I mean, as with previous applications I've raised this concern with, I'm concerned that this is outside of the neighbourhood plan. I fully recognise the implications of tilted balance, that we can't demonstrate the 5-year housing supply. We've gone past that point. And my concern is that the phrase significantly and demonstrably outweigh is open to subjective interpretation. So the committee report might assess that in one way, but it can also be judged by other criteria. It's not a fixed definition. So, I mean, in terms of the ancient woodland, I know that the previous development, the Bellway Homes development, borders one side of the bottom bit of Fiddler's Wood, and this new proposal will box in the bottom bit and go up one of the sides. And obviously I'm well aware of the buffer zone, but the problem with boxing in ancient woodland like that is the fragmentation of habitat. Unless it is surrounded by open space, you box in a woodland with homes, you are degrading the habitat, even if you've not chopped down a single tree or gone into it, in terms of denying the wider open space around, which you know, is often needed. So I'm just not convinced that it won't have any effect on that woodland. And I understand that the Woodland Trust and the Forestry Commission have both raised objections on the grounds of the effect of the woodland on the woodland. So that is a serious consideration or concern I have there. It does seem a rather large development, given the size of the previous development and the extent it extends back. So I just have multiple concerns over this, and the fact that it does mark a significant extension to the size of 8 Ash Green, which is it's already, as has been pointed out, impinges on the village to the other side as well. It doesn't sit comfortable with me at all. I'm obviously aware of the pressure that tilted balance has brought in, but to me, it significantly and demonstrably changes the nature of that particular village. and it significantly demonstrably is outside of the neighbourhood plan, and it significantly demonstrably will affect the setting of a piece of ancient woodland. So those are my concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Gocher. Right, Councillor. Right, yeah, okay. If you could just allow Catherine Spindler to come in first, as she'd raised her hand first. Catherine, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I did go to the site this afternoon. It was good to actually see it in a clear view. So we noticed the farm track that goes down to the bottom field, which will still be in use. On the picture of what it possibly could look like once it has housing, that's classed as a road. So on that road, for farm equipment to get down to that bottom field, it would be preferably without parking on that road. It's off-road parking for those houses, I'm guessing. And also, if the farm equipment that's coming off the field at the end of that road, it's going to get a bit grubby and possibly hazardous at times. And who's maintaining that end of the road?
Thank you. And on to Robert, Councillor Davison.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Lucy, for a very comprehensive report. But since then, I've heard nothing but concern from the external speakers. So much so that, in my opinion, we only face two options, really, and that's either a deferral or a refusal. Because we need to say that this is a key decision that will affect all the other ones coming forward. We know that the local plan ran out of life, if you like, middle of February, and we've seen the effect by allocating quite a few 150 house sites outside the plan. This one's 250 houses, and again, I went on the site visit. It's grade 2 agricultural land, which means you can grow high value crops with irrigation, onions, potatoes, and vegetables. There's not that much around in Colchester. Also, the landscape impact, I think, will be significant, because actually, although Fordham is a long way away to the north, at the northern edge of this site, actually the ground then slopes all the way down to the Colne Valley, which really is an undeveloped nature stronghold. So all those buffer zones of 30 metres, they're going to need significant planting with trees to try and offset any of that impact. You've got a grade 1 church at Fordham, and that will, the houses will be seen. We've seen the sloping lines on the slides that have been presented tonight. So I'd like more information from the officers, really, on the significantly demonstrable options, and the fact that when there are significant objections, is that sufficient NPPF for a refusal? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll give anyone else that hasn't spoke the opportunity to speak, to allow a range of views. If I don't see any hands, which I'm not seeing any hands, I will go to the officers to respond to the questions and the debate raised. Thank you.
Chair, it's quite a lot to go through, so I hope I cover everything, but if I don't, I can come back again. I think I'll just start by addressing comments read out on behalf of Councillor Sunnox, because that's probably a little bit more straightforward to deal with, rather than delving into tilted balance, etc. So in terms of strategic infrastructure requirements and the infrastructure delivery plan that's been referred to, That infrastructure delivery plan is being developed as part of the local plan review. It currently carries no weight as it needs to go through further consultations and is yet to be examined, just for clarity on that point. The important thing to consider in terms of Section 106 requirements, as members will know, is that you have these three very definite tests, which is, I'll read them out just for absolute clarity. So there's three tests. They need to be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. They need to be directly related to the development in question, and they need to be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. So requests based on an understanding or presumption that a developer may be able to afford more doesn't meet those tests. Requests for wider strategic projects, they'd need to demonstrate that the application would otherwise be unacceptable if they weren't secured, as well as demonstrating that they are directly related to the development in question. The draft heads of terms are all set out in the committee reports. They're based upon consultee and stakeholder advice, and with the benefit of evidence that those obligations meet those tests that I've just read out. For clarity, it's standard procedure that the draft heads of terms that we report to you have been agreed with the applicant prior to coming to you at planning committee. So that is what would be secured in the Section 106. I'll move on to some of the other matters that were discussed. Just wondering where to start. With the plan that we showed for a second time when Councillor Naylor was speaking, yes, apologies for any ambiguity. I was simply indicating the main built-up area of Oldham, but I take the point that obviously village locations there are sporadic development, and they do extend much further. In terms of 8 Ash Green neighbourhood plan, this site does sit outside the neighbourhood plan area, so it isn't part of that neighbourhood plan. I take the point regarding coalescence. There's been no consultee objection or comment on coalescence. Place Services Landscape, who consult on behalf of the council, haven't made any comments or any evidence with regards to coalescence. Then looking at the tilted balance and when you're looking at elements of harm versus benefit. So it's not as straightforward as doing a tally chart of areas of harm versus areas of benefit. They all carry different weight, which is what I set out in my conclusion in the presentation. So if you're thinking of it like a pair of, household scales, you have areas of moderate harm that may weigh 20 grams. You've got elements of substantial and significant harm that would weigh a kilogram, for example. So you're balancing it up in that sense, which is why I set out the elements of harm versus benefit in terms of less than substantial harm, moderate weight, significant weight, substantial weight. Where else? And in terms of the ancient woodland, just to confirm that the statutory consultees have not objected to the scheme on the basis of the ancient woodland. Our consultant at Place Services Ecology are satisfied that the buffer area that's proposed would avoid adverse impacts on the woodland. The Forestry Commission hasn't objected to the application. They don't object or support applications. They have expressed some concerns, but they've also set out a series of mitigation measures which does follow their own government guidance and the government guidance produced by them and Natural England. Within that guidance, the minimum buffer for ancient woodlands is 15 metres. So in this case, it's increased to 30 metres, and we have incorporated all of the mitigation measures requested or suggested by Forestry Commission. The Woodland Trust have objected They were reconsulted on the basis of some further evidence and comment that was received, but they haven't responded to that consultation. In terms of loss of agricultural land, Natural England would be a statutory consultee to comment on the loss of agricultural land, but they do have a threshold for that, which is loss of 20 hectares, and this site falls way below that threshold where they would comment. I'll step back to the ancient woodland again, Councillor Gocher, referring to fragmentation of habitat. That's been assessed in the report. Again, it's been considered by Place Services, Ecology as well, with no concerns with regards to fragmenting habitat, and we would secure significant landscaped areas as well as biodiversity net gain. Again, all set out in the committee report. I think that might cover most points, but please do come back to me if there's anything else.
Yeah, thank you. So there was talk about conflict between farm equipment and off-road parking on the proposed open space, given its agricultural access. If you could address that, please.
Yes, I mean, this is just an outline application, so details haven't been proposed or secured as yet. Of course, if there were any farm vehicles travelling through the site, that would need to be incorporated as part of the detailed plans that would come in at reserved matters. The landscape coding document, I believe, does refer to there being no parking along that, particularly along that eastern edge of the site.
Okay, and there was discussion about the density of the planting that would be needed on the buffer in order to prevent the spoiling of views, and there was a Grade 1 church mentioned.
Yes, so in terms of the planting, the Forestry Commission did suggest planting, which I believe would be denser tree planting for the first 15 metres of that buffer, and then scrub planting for the remainder 15 metres. And as I said, no pathways or public access in that area at all. Sorry, what was the other point you asked?
That covers it, because they were talking about the spoiling of views and the Grade 1 church in the distance.
Yes, in terms of the Grade 1 church, that is referred to in the amendment sheet, so it's assessed as part of the setting of assets. The amendment sheet does also cover that assessment of Fiddler's Wood in terms of the setting of an asset as well.
Thank you. And there were some broader comments about coalescence and saying that that your report was specifically highlighting the 900 metres gap between the development and village centre, but there were properties coming further out from that, and that was cited as quite normal when it comes to village settlements. And there was talk about it breaking a policy on coalescence, and there was an established agreement not to coalesce the two villages. So if you could address those concerns, please.
Yes, as I say, I think the important matter is coming down to evidence, and our consultant, Place Services Landscape, hasn't referred to or commented on any issues with regards to coalescence, so we don't have any evidence that would suggest that there is a significant issue in that regard.
Thank you. And Councillor Davison talked about we are taking a decision that will affect all decisions that come afterwards, so that's the significance of the changed environment involving the tilted balance.
Yes, there would be a changed environment, and I think if more of these types of applications are likely to come through in similar scenarios, that same issue would be raised. However, in terms of precedent, there wouldn't be a significant issue with precedent in approving this scheme. Each application needs to be assessed on its own merits. Each site would have its own characteristic. The impacts would differ, for example. So there isn't a issue in terms of precedent from my point of view.
Thank you. And then the final one, there was a big picture concern raised about the term significantly and demonstrably outweigh is open to objective interpretation, and they felt that there was more information needed on the significantly and demonstrably outweighing options as the outcome is quite significant.
It's a very high threshold test, so it would really need to be very significant to demonstrate that level of harm. We haven't had any objections from statutory consultees. I know there's concerns about traffic. Highway Authority haven't objected. National Highways haven't objected. They've acknowledged there's an issue with Junction 26, but this scheme would not result in significant adverse impact, and they've made recommended conditions to address that and gain some mitigation for the scheme. We haven't had any objection, as I mentioned, we haven't had any objections from statutory consultees. I don't have any evidence with regards to significant harm.
Thank you. And one question I'd like yourself or Simon to answer is that we know that there is a changing environment in relation to the NPPF. We know the government is still working through what that will be, but there has been a draft sort of consultation issued, and the word deferment was basically mentioned. So is there anything within the NPPF that would affect a deferment decision on this particular application?
I don't think there's anything specific in the NPPF, but as part of the government's wider package of reforms, there was an announcement last year by the Secretary of State of an intention where councils are minded to refuse applications for 150 plus dwellings for them to be called in for determination by the Secretary of State. So if you decided to defer this application, our understanding is that secondary legislation goes live on the 26th of March, in which case, if you then resolved to refuse this application, it would need to be referred to the Secretary of State or to the Ministry to take that route for determination if you were minded to refuse. So the ultimate decision would rest with the Secretary of State and not this Council.
Thank you. So I infer from that if a deferral was to take place, it would likely go past the 26th of March deadline, in which case it would be open to the Secretary of State to call it in, and the decision will be taken out of our hands. Okay, so we have heard the speakers, and we have heard from yourselves, and the officers have answered your points. So we come to the point about making a proposal, and I would ask for a proposer and a seconder, and remind you that the recommendation from the officer is for approval. So understanding that, is there anyone that wishes to make this? Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I don't think there's any defendable grounds for refusal, therefore I propose that we approve this. Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCarthy, does anybody wish to speak on the proposal? I don't see anybody. Councillor Rippingale.
My only concern is about the coalescence. Just because I know the area well, I grew up around there, so I don't feel like we've had enough answers on the coalescence issue. There seems to be a disagreement on where the boundary is, and I get it, there's the natural centre of a village, but there's also where the villagers actually think the village ends. So for me, it just feels like I need a bit more information about the coalescence issue that's been brought up.
Okay, thank you. Well, a proposal has been made and seconded. Is the proposal and seconded acceptable for officers to answer those questions?
Definitely.
Yes, okay. Officers, if you could give us more around the coalescence issue.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Lucy, please feel free to chip in, but my understanding really is to look at the common dictionary definition of what coalescence means. And it means the joining or merging of elements to form one mass or whole. Now, we appreciate that technically this, or not technically, factually, this application is within Oldham. Oldham obviously has an area where there is a discernible heart to the settlement, and then a typical pattern of scattered and sporadic development outside it. Now, I don't think that any coalescence policy is intended to suggest that development shouldn't be acceptable where there is any form of scattered and sporadic development, because frankly, in a settled landscape of this part of Essex, that would mean that no extension of any settlement would ever be acceptable where it was close to a parish boundary, because effectively it would give rise to coalescence. Clearly, the two settlements would remain discernibly separate in terms of 8 Ash Green would not become welded onto a super settlement of Oldham. I think that the common definition in the dictionary is very helpful in that, to my mind, there is no doubt this would not give rise to any sense of coalescence of the settlement. It would be new development, obviously, on the edge of the parish of Oldham, adjoining existing development in 8 Ash Green, but in no sense would that wed the heart of the settlement or with 8 Ash Green. Lucy, please feel free to comment further.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Davison, we are now debating the proposal. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I'd like to register, if you like, my disappointment. And the reason is manyfold. We've heard some of the concerns from the speakers, but what concerns me as a planning councillor is that this was submitted to the planning department in June last year. Up till January, we could have refused it because we had a 5-year planning housing supply. Why has it had to come to us after that? And there's no easy answer because it's here today, we've got to determine it. But I just feel very vexed that it makes us totally ineffective in actually getting the best deal for Colchester.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm sure that the officers would like to answer that, so I will give them the option to do so.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Davis, and I do appreciate that point. Of course, officers were aware that the local plan was nearing the end of its life. The local plan team or the policy team had arranged to start that local plan review process in good time. So the timescale would allow for us to have a reasonable transition from the old local plan to the new local plan, or at least having the new local plan with sufficient weight, so we didn't have quite this issue with the plan being out of date. Unfortunately, the delays have meant that hasn't happened, which is why we find ourselves now in this position. The application did come in June. There were some technical matters to resolve, and that was sensible to do so, because if we were to refuse the scheme and it went to appeal, those matters would only be resolved at appeal and would be liable to costs. So those needed to be dealt with. And then the closer you get to February, if you were to refuse the application at that point, despite us technically having an in-date local plan, by the time the appeal was heard, we would clearly have an out-of-date local plan. We couldn't demonstrate our 5-year housing land supply based on our published figures. Our housing land supply with the new targets that we have from government, we would have a 3.59 year supply. But I am aware that developers are arguing that quite vehemently and claiming that we have a much lower supply.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to say thank Lucy very much for that full response. But yeah, we're where we are and we can't do much about it, unfortunately. All I'd say is that can she reassure me that the wording is that under 15.1, the obligations that would be agreed as part of any planning permission would be. So this is the bare minimum when it goes back to officers to complete the 106 bits for this site.
Thank you. Lucy, what assurances can you give Councillor Davis?
Yes, so as I mentioned, these heads of terms in terms of the obligations and financial contributions, that's all been agreed with the developer. Because it's an outline scheme, what we want to do is we set out generally how the contributions would work in terms of per dwelling or per bedroom numbers, so that when the detailed reserve matters come in, we're actually getting the most we can get depending on what they're actually proposing, rather than doing a general figure now that may benefit the developer, be a disadvantage to us if they build properties of larger bedroom numbers, etc. So yes, I can assure you this is the bare minimum. We negotiate Section 106s tirelessly. Officers work really hard to negotiate these Section 106s and getting the best possible outcome from them. So that's my assurance to you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Sorry, last one, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. I accept that. The comment I made on the site visit was the fact that what a shame that we've got two big developments next door to each other in 8 Ash Green, or sorry, next to 8 Ash Green. The problem is there's hardly any infrastructure for them, for the villagers. I know the village halls are going to get a slight improvement, but there's a chip shop and a sort of convenience store.
Thank you very much, and I'm pretty sure you'll make that plain to the local plan committee when it continues its considerations, and the passing of the plan, which has taken its time and resulted in the tilted balance coming into play. And we were informed of this when we were discussing the Roman Circus application, and the committee membership hasn't changed, and a senior officer sat there and said to you that this will come into play in February, and we are still awaiting a local plan review. Okay, so I'm going to move to the vote, and therefore can I have a show of hands in favour? I'll just ask Madeline for clarity to read out what it is you are voting on. Sam, so you just repeat what you said in your proposal, that
there's no defendable grounds for refusal, therefore I propose that we approve.
Approve, and that is the officer's recommendation that is in your reports. All those in favour, please show.
It's 5 in favour.
All those against, please show.
That's 5 against.
And any abstentions? 1 abstention. So we have a tie on votes.
Abstention.
Sorry? Yes, so we have 5 for, 5 against, 1 abstention. We have a tie on votes, which entitles me as chair to make a casting vote. And I will cast my vote in favour of the recommendation. Thank you. Right, it is now 7:15, so I suggest we take a break before we go on to the second item. Is it 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Yes, so if you could be back at just gone 25 past. Thank you. Right, welcome. So, welcome back, and we will now proceed on to, if everyone could take the chairs, please, thank you. We will proceed on to item 7.2, which is Land off Rowhedge Road, Colchester. And again, I confirm, as I did earlier, that a site meeting had taken place after request of the Council Scordis. Can I invite Daniel Cooper to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is an outline application, all matters reserved, but it's for the erection of up to 75 residential dwellings, including affordable housing, public open space, landscaping and sustainable drainage systems, SUDs, and vehicular access point from Rowhedge Road. All matters are reserved except for the means of access. There is the site location plan. You've got Old Heath to the northwest there, and further down you've got Cleveland Lodge southeast. Further down is towards Rowhedge, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. The site as shown above is 3.99 hectares. This is an indicative site layout plan. Again, this is outline apart from access, so this just gives an idea of the developer's intentions. But you can see here where the red arrow is, that's where a new access is going to be. The old access is just slightly further north, which we accessed the site with earlier, around where my pointer is waving. So the new access will be at the red arrow. This grey, light brown area is built form. So is this one over here, and you'll notice a large green corridor running through the centre of the site up to a SUDS drainage basin, trees and green area here. It's surrounded by trees, are all existing. They are not going to be touched. As you can see, the development will not go near them. And further beyond the trees is the Upper Colne SSSI site. Down here is Cleveland Lodge to the southeast. That's a care home, and beyond that, dotted around here, you have several bungalows, and you also have other built form the other side of Rowhedge Road opposite Cleveland Lodge. I can come back to this slide at any point if people want to clarify anything. So this is the submitted plans for the access, which I will zoom in a bit for the next slide. There's your existing one here at the top, and this is the new proposed access, which is the only matter for consideration beyond principle, as everything else is reserved. You can see it demonstrates the visibility displays there, and this access has had no comments of objection from highways. Okay, this is a wider satellite view. The site is down here where my arrow is waving around, Cleveland Lodge there. This shows what's beyond the trees. So you have the field here, you have the reservoir here, and beyond that is the River Colne. This is the SSSI area around here. So there is separation between the site and the trees, but as I said, as you saw in the other slide, the built form will not be close to the northern boundary. And this is another satellite image to show that there has been a number of objections with concerns over coalescence. Cleveland Lodge is up at the top left there, so the site is beyond that. So this demonstrates that Rowhedge being down here, we don't feel that there is much weight to be given to coalescence, as this would all be retained as a separation between Old Heath, the site, and Rowhedge further to the south. On to some site photos. Apologies, it was a misty day earlier in the week. This is the Rowhedge Road to the right. The entrance to the site is just beyond this telegraph pole. We're looking to the east, where the road curves round to the left. Looking into the site there, with the access just on our right, there's an existing gravel path which we walked up earlier on the site visits, going most of the way into the site. With the gravel path on the left, we're looking to the right, where, if you remember from the indicative layout, there will be some built form there on the right. And to the left is where the other built form will be located, with the northwest boundary being shown with the trees. The trees essentially outline the boundary. Further up the track there, looking back towards Rowhedge Road, showing the existing dwellings looking out onto the site. Rowhedge towards the left and Old Heath towards the right. Again, another view of the Cleveland Lodge to the right, to the east of the site. Gives you an idea of how close that is, and the development will go up and around it there. That's what I have to present at the moment. I will go back. Actually, no, I do have a video, so I'm going to see if it works. Bear with me. Okay. I'm standing in the middle of the site here. There is the gravel path. Going round to the east, Cleveland Lodge. Coming towards Rowhedge Road, the dwellings that we saw in the other photos. Gravel path. That's towards Old Heath to the west, and back round again. And it worked. Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So we'll move to speakers. I will invite Mariah Java to, on behalf of the applicant, to speak. You have 3 minutes when the red light shows, and the bell will go after 2, and you'll have 1 minute afterwards. Please go ahead.
Good evening. I would like to begin by thanking the Council's case officer for their presentation and report, and for their work and professionalism throughout the process of considering our application. Gladman have worked proactively with your officers to prepare a scheme that would contribute towards meeting housing needs in a sustainable way. Consequently, there are no unresolved objections from any statutory consultees to the proposals presented to you today. The National Planning Policy Framework outlines the government's objectives to significantly boost the supply of housing to tackle the effects of the national housing crisis. The provision of up to 75 new homes should be seen as a significant benefit, helping to expand the opportunities to first-time buyers and young and growing families to access the housing market. This will also include the delivery of 22 affordable dwellings at a time where the Council has recognised that a 5-year housing land supply shortfall is now being experienced within the district, as highlighted in your officer's report. The proposals would also represent sustainable development in broader social, economic and environmental terms. Located immediately adjacent to the built-up area of Colchester, the main focus for growth in the district, future residents of the proposals would have the ability to reach local services by walking, cycling and public transport. The application also demonstrates how the scheme could deliver extensive areas of green infrastructure. Over 47%, or just under half of the total site area, is to include areas of formal and informal public open space, a children's play area and new and enhanced areas of landscaping. These areas of landscaping and green infrastructure would also ensure that the proposals can be sensitively assimilated into their landscape setting, alongside the areas of existing woodland that also border the site, and will be positively managed to maximise their benefits for biodiversity and habitat connectivity, with Place Services Ecology and Natural England having no objections to the proposals. If planning permission is granted, it would also be our intention to make swift progress with the preparation of a Section 106 agreement to secure any necessary developer contributions to mitigate the impact of the development of local infrastructure. These would also benefit the wider community, and these would include over £215,000 to local community facilities, over £45,000 to sports and play facilities at Rowhedge Recreation Ground, and £70,000 to NHS and ambulance services. Your case officer has carefully considered all of the relevant technical matters and policy considerations, and has concluded that on balance there are no unacceptable impacts or harms that would justify withholding planning consent. Under the tilted balance applying to the application's determination, the relevant decision-making tests are whether the harms of granting planning permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and in this instance it has been demonstrated that this would not be the case. We thank members for their consideration of our application. We fully endorse the officer's recommendation, and we respectfully invite you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and bang on time. Thank you very much. Right, we now have visiting councillors, so I will invite Councillor Scordis to come and speak to the committee, you have 5 minutes, and once the red light goes, and the bell will go off the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. And let's be clear, let's call this what this is. This is speculative development, simple as. The local plan is clear. The current local plan has this designated as a coastal protection site. The report does allude to this and almost seems to dismiss it. So who was wrong? The local plan committee, the officers working on that, or planners at the moment? It seems very odd that that is just dismissed. Why did we allocate it as that land in that case? And in the upcoming local plan, it's actually an area of biological importance. So as the lead member for environment, I want to remind members that one of our key strategic aims is around the environment and biodiversity. So this is a significant step away from the actual council's policies. So as far as I can see, this application actually breaches what we are moving forward as a council for. What hasn't been mentioned here, and it tells me that there isn't much local knowledge being used, is Gladmans have not mentioned the contamination on the land. Are they even aware of it? Are they aware that a few years ago, horses who were grazing on that land had to be moved because they got ill and some died? We even have residents here today, if the chairman will allow them to speak, who can tell you about some of the things that are buried under there. That has not been mentioned. You do not have enough information as a committee, I think, to make a value judgment there. Badgers. Badgers have not been mentioned. Old British institution. Badgers are on this land. There's one of the objections actually has had it blacked out. That has not been mentioned again by Gladmans. And nothing has been mentioned on the report at all about how they are going to manage and deal with the amount of biodiversity there. There's been no report on some of the rare species that are on this land because it is relatively untouched. I don't think I've ever seen many people actually walk down there. So it's a bit of land that has not been touched by humans most of the time, and dog walkers and so forth. So that has not actually been raised as well. So I think that's something you have to consider as a committee. Also, where it's located, and obviously it's going to be a longer road going down, it's almost 2 miles away from the local shops, from Lidl and from the co-op. So no one's, being frank, is going to walk that unless it's a really nice sunny day. And there's also no cycling routes. So that talk about, people getting on their bike. Councillor Lilly's going to talk about the speeding on this road that we've seen. It's not, there's no safe cycling routes on there if you're not a confident cyclist. And there is a bus, yes, but that's been cut as well. So, people are going to drive. School places, big issue in the area. The local schools, Lawrence, Old Heath Primary, Kendal, these are all very old schools that have no capacity to expand. They have no building room to expand. They are your old kind of 1930s build schools. Some are single form schools as well. So again, that is going to be a significant issue. There was also a previous application opposite that was stopped for the same reasons that we're highlighting today and residents have highlighted. That was for one house, not 75. And the planning officer has let me know he was the one who rejected that at the time. The tilted balance has made the difference here. So coming to the tilted balance, where I disagree with the officers here, I can see very few benefits here. We're not talking about social housing here, we're talking about affordable. So it's not really helping local people. We're talking about first-time buyers. Don't make me laugh. Young people my age cannot afford a house. So let's not have that nonsense repeated. At the end of the day, I can see a lot of negatives here. I can see the fact that where the houses are backing on, you do actually have some coalescence problems with Rowhedge, where it starts to lose its identity. If you know that road and take it regularly like I do, there are serious issues I have concerns about there. You have concerns around the biodiversity and breaking our strategic priorities as a local council. The contamination, again, has not been mentioned. There's going to be a problem down the line. And the fact that the local plan has designated it as two important areas in the current and the future local plan tells me that the tilted balance is actually in the favour of refusing this. And my feeling is you do not have enough detail as a committee. You have not been given enough detail on certain issues. And as this is under the 150 homes that Simon Cairns alluded to, you have the power to defer at the minimum. I believe this should be rejected. People of Rowhedge and Old Heath are ready to stand up to people like Gladmans, happy to accept housing where we've allocated in a local plan, but we will fight this locally. But you have the option of a deferral if you don't want to go for a refusal here, so we can get more information as a committee and be more informed to make the right decision around this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scordis. 5 minutes and 2 seconds. Right. Councillor Lilly, your opportunity to address the committee. You have 5 minutes when the red button light shows and bell after 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, committee and officers. Yeah, we're here tonight to discuss this speculative application by the experts in it, Gladman's. As we all know, they swoop in when local councils are vulnerable, and let's face it, the councillors on the local plan committee put us vulnerable by delaying the local plan, enabling this development to come in, and we're here tonight to fight this application. If the local plan had been passed, it's in there, being protected as a site of biodiversity. It's protected woodland. We will not even consider a plan application for that. But because of the delay, they have swooped in, they've put it in there, and they've talked tonight about how wonderful it is, and it's going to be such a great benefit for everybody. There are no local shops, as Lee already said. The schools are full up in Old Heath and school in Rowhedge. They will have to go by car, travel everywhere. The bus service is rubbish. The first bus keep cutting the times. It's absolutely awful. And the best thing about it, I had to laugh because they put the site, the entrance to the site, right opposite the VAS sign that was put, the vehicle assisted sign that tells people to slow down. That was put in many years ago because of the crashes that happened on that corner by all the speed of vehicles that come out of Rowhedge. Unfortunately, we're terrible down there, and so it's sort of ironic, really, isn't it? They put allegedly a safe access in opposite the sign that tells people it's dangerous around that corner. And our good friends, the highways, well, they haven't actually made any comments. How many years has it been? I've been on this committee in the past, and yet we still await for a comment to be made by them. They're set up, they're supposed to protect people, but they're atrocious. So a couple of years ago, we have a speed watch in the local area. There's 3 of us. Councillor Dave Harris is one of them. And we have about 4 roads we go out regular. The worst road in our whole of Beerchurch and Old Heath is actually Rowhedge Road. We have one at the bottom of Rowhedge Road. In an hour, we caught 60 vehicles doing over 40, let alone 20 miles an hour or 30. And at the top end of, in the Old Heath part of it, near Baswick Road, we have even more. There was 40 in that. It's absolutely atrocious road. As soon as they come onto people to speed all the way to Rowhedge, and they speed out of Rowhedge all the way to the junction at Fingerlow Road. So it's completely unsafe. But highways didn't object, so that's all it was. That's ignored by that. But I might go on again and again. I'll leave it up to you. It's pretty obvious that if we have the local plan in place to protect us, it's not recognised for any development whatsoever, nor in the old local plan. It was never recognised that. Oh, and for years growing up, we were told not to go on that land because it's polluted. Those of you who went on the site visit, I should get tested if I was you. Horses did die on there, and that's why there's no cattle on there. So, but that's local legends. The green area in the middle is a bit of a laugh because that's probably the actual site of the huge water drain that runs from the sewage farm to Aberdeen Reservoir. But they don't mention that as well. That's why they can't build there. They're putting in a nice green area for us because of that. It's an SSI site all around that area. We don't want to do that. One thing you must remember though, because this is in the new local plan, as a site protected for biodiversity and wildlife, think about Middlewick Ranges. That is protected for a site of biodiversity and wildlife. You're going to pass this one tonight? Think about what you're doing when those developers look at the report for this. Will they use the same argument to look at Middlewick again? So, committee, do the right thing tonight, reject this application, And then when the local plan comes in, we'll all be back to normal, and then they'll be left as a Greenland site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Just before you sit down, please, I take it you were criticising highways as an institution rather than the individual officers. I'm happy for you to criticise.
What officers are they?
To criticise elected members, which is fine. That's what we're here for. But officers of any authority do not have a voice.
Sorry, I don't know what you mean. I think that my record speaks for itself. Even when I was chair of this committee, I was very, what's the word? One word I was trying to word I could use. And I was actually good friends with Martin, who's the senior officer at Highways, and I would often speak to him, and we would go over ground. So I take your comments, but I won't take them on board, thank you. I'm happy with what I said. Highways are not doing this council or this area any favours whatsoever. In fact, they have failed us over the years. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification, Councillor Lee. Right, we will. I'm going to invite members of the committee to ask questions, discuss, and debate. So, have you got anyone who's in? Councillor Gochar. Right, Councillor Gochar, would you like to address the committee?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, here we go again. This is, I mean, in some ways, this is similar to the previous application. Although it seems to me that the biodiversity of the site is much more of a concern, and also the fact that clearly this is an attempt to exploit the gap between two local plans, as far as I see it. So I'll start with those concerns. A number of questions. First of all, it's been alluded to that there is something buried on the site that is of real concern to the potential health of any future dwellers. Could we please have some clarification on what that actually is? And it would seem to be very irresponsible to approve something without that kind of clear information. So can we have some clarification on that? Secondly, I want to raise a point that was in the committee report. I think I pulled out the right bit, section 17.9, where it states, quote, "It is advisable that if significant harm to biodiversity is a reason for refusal, this should be supported by a qualified ecologist." So what qualified ecologist? Does that mean that one of us has to be a qualified ecologist, that we have to have before the meeting sought the advice of a qualified ecologist? There isn't a qualified ecologist, to my mind, working on the council in planning. So how are we supposed to be supported by a qualified ecologist? What does that actually mean? Because it does seem to me that the policy ENV1, which requires applications to conserve or enhance the biodiversity value of sites, is something that this application seems to be rather going against. Thank you.
Okay, I've not got any names on my Vice Chair's list, so I'm giving anyone the opportunity that wants to speak. Please do take the opportunity. That's what we're here for. Okay, so I will now go to Daniel and ask him to address the points of the speakers and Councillor Gocha's points, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will do the speakers first in order. The coastal protection site, the site within the coastal protection area was brought up. Yes, it is indeed covered by ENV2. The report does go through that policy point by point and address each point on that, and it does acknowledge there is some conflict with policy ENV2. However, it's not complete conflict, and ENV2 doesn't necessarily mean no development within the coastal protection belt. And it was considered that looking at each of those points and weighing up what the conflict was and wasn't, that it was okay to proceed regarding that. The upcoming neighbourhood plan and the biological or biodiversity label or importance on it. I mean, previously discussed at the 7.1 item, the upcoming neighbourhood plan can't be given any weight, but we do acknowledge that there were elements mentioned, and think that the relevant policy is policy ST2 environment and the green network and waterways, which is what that label that was seen on the plan for this site. It does have various points on mitigation as well as protection of biodiversity sites. The label on it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a no-go, that there are, within that policy, bear in mind we can't give it any weight, there were certain mitigation measures suggested that can be acceptable. So when it comes to any strengthening or enhancing on the site, and I know we are talking about houses going on the site, but regarding what else is done with the land, the green corridor, etc., and the Suds Basin and any other enhancement that comes through, bearing in mind this is outline only with only access to consider, that doesn't necessarily mean that policy ST2, given any weight, would prevent any development here. The contamination potential, both visiting councillors mentioned that. There is a section in the committee report regarding this, and the council's contamination officer did get consulted on this and has requested at least 5 conditions which are included at the end of the report. And that is basically regarding investigation of what's there, and if anything is there, remediation measures before anything is done beyond that, and a certificate to prove that that is all okay. So they are included, and should this be approved, it would go forward to sort the contamination out. Where are we now? So the sustainability of the site. There is a bus stop outside. I don't know the full extent of the services, but there is a bus stop outside it, and there is a footpath running all the way along the front of it, leading up towards Old Heath and in the other direction towards Rowhedge. It is adjacent, it's outside, but adjacent to the settlement boundary, the Old Heath side. So we don't consider this to be isolated in the countryside, and policies don't prevent any development in adjacent to the settlement boundaries. So we do consider it on the balance to be in a sustainable location. School places. On the contribution section, you'll note that education was consulted for contributions. They also, in their comments, didn't bring up any shortfall that they were concerned about with local schools as a result of this application, and a suitable contribution will be secured in the Section 106 legal agreement. The previous house was refused. I mean, I can't comment and directly compare the two, but it was around 2 years ago, and I explained that the situation is different now, but each application is determined on its own merits, but we are now in a period of the tilted balance, and the environment has changed with regards to new houses and what we consider and give weight to. There were other considerations with that site as well, but again, I won't use tonight to go into that. Badgers aren't mentioned because they are highly protected, and we can't divulge their location or hints towards their location. So any issues with badgers or any other wildlife will be dealt with at reserve matters, as will pretty much most of these concerns brought up tonight. But yeah, we can't really label where badgers are. On to Councillor Lilly, some similar points. School places have been addressed. The location of the access being unsafe. Again, I'm going to mention highways. Sorry. Highways were consulted, and they have not objected to the access, which is the only thing they considered. They would have looked at the records of crash instances in that area, and if they'd have had any concerns regarding high levels, then they would have brought that up and either objected or requested amendments to the access accordingly. So I can only say that the relevant people were consulted and we did not get objections or requests to revise the proposed access from them. So that it kind of links to the speeding on the road. That's not necessarily something that can prevent development. That is almost another matter, but it is acknowledged that there's a good view around the road, so maybe someone is more inclined to speed around there. But again, I don't think that can have any bearing on whether this is acceptable as development or not. And the comparison with Middlewick, again, I don't think we can compare it to Middlewick. That was quite a significant biodiversity area. This one has potentially been labelled as a potential one in a plan that we can't necessarily give any weight to. Councillors here. Councillor Gocher. I think I addressed the biodiversity site, kind of. Happy to take more questions if you want to. Exploit the gap between local plans. That was mentioned and discussed by Lucy. And regarding where we are with our current local plan and our housing supply, to kind of a well-used phrase, we are where we are with housing supply at the moment, and the applications have to be determined and considered as and when they come in. The contamination was been addressed. The report 17.9. Yet that phrase was used because place landscape and place ecology were consulted on this. And more notably place ecology on this point, offered no objections subject to conditions. So that would be a qualified ecologist within place, and we include their conditions in the recommendations and recommended conditions. So to support a refusal tonight based on ecology, we would be going against an ecologist from place. So we would have to have, that basically means we would have to have another ecologist to refute that and to back the refusal based on that. I think I've addressed the points, but please let me know if there's any I've missed.
Thank you. Now, at this point, Councillor McCarthy wishes to speak, so I'll let him speak first.
I just want to back you up, Councillor Gocher, when it comes to potentially refusing this application supported by an ecologist. Well, we can't do that. We can't provide one this evening. You said you've obviously spoken with one already. Well, we would potentially like another. So I don't think we can refuse it tonight, but we could potentially defer it and ask you to speak to another ecologist. Would that be something you potentially support, Councillor Gocher?
Yes. Okay. Now, I take it that's expressing a view, so can I let Lucy come in?
Expressing a view, yeah.
Lucy, come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide a little extra clarity in terms of the comments that we've received from Place Services Ecology, just for your benefit. So just to confirm what they have considered. So they have fully reviewed the ecological impact assessment. They've also reviewed the applicant's response to they made initial comments to request further information. They've also considered the applicant's response to those relating to the likely impact of the development of designated sites, protected and priority habitats and species, and identification of proportionate mitigation. They've also reviewed the information submitted related to mandatory biodiversity net gain, the biodiversity net gain assessment, design stage, and the statutory biodiversity metric. They've also considered the impact of the site on internationally designated sites within the zone of influence on the Essex coast as well. They're satisfied that the application has sufficient ecological information available to support the determination of the application. They've considered protected species all amongst that, as well as part of the ecological assessment. And then they've recommended a series of conditions for mitigation and enhancement measures, both for at construction stage and also for the lifetime of the development as well, just to provide that extra layer of clarity for you.
Right, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Riffingale, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a thought about it. So just tracking back to policy ENV2, looking at point 3 in the policy, which says not significantly detrimental to nature conservation and the landscape seascape of the coast. In the report, it says it's likely to be detrimental to conserving nature, conservation and the landscape of the character of the coast. And the supporting evidence of this would be our strategic biodiversity assessment, which is being prepared for the emerging local plan, has concluded that developing a site would harm biodiversity, and the site forms a strategic biodiversity area which both strengthens the point 3 concern. While the mitigation is proposed, the starting point has acknowledged the harm. In terms of point 4, delivering and sustaining social and economic sustainability, benefiting important to the well-being of coastal communities, the report accepts that there are general benefits, which is fine, but they're not related to the well-being of the coastal community. So therefore, condition 4 isn't met. And the proposal in condition point 5 of the policy states that the proposal, so that point 5 is just provides opportunity and scope for adaptations to climate change. Officers say that proposal does not provide opportunity and scope for climate change adaptation at this stage, noting that detailed design could add those measures later. So as we look at that policy now, it counts against the scheme.
Are you building up to a point?
No, I'm just pointing out that we're not, there's a few points here where we're saying we're not meeting our own policy.
Thank you. And can you clarify whether that comes from the existing local plan or the local plan that is emerging?
Well, this is our policy ENV2, so we'd have to clarify whether that has weight at the moment.
Fine. So carry on. Please carry on and develop the point.
Yeah. So that's quite significant. That's not just 1 point. That's 3 points that we're going against our own strategic biodiversity assessment. So I just want to clarify how I get it. It's a concern. There's a conflict there and a tilted balance, and that seems quite a significant harm for me. So again, I go back to Councillor McCarthy's point about deferring, because I don't feel like we have enough information here.
Okay, thank you. So from my point of view of chairing this, can the officers just clarify whether Councillor Rivingale is relating to an existing policy which has full weight, or is she talking about an emerging one, which if my understanding is correct, we can only give very little weight to? Can you please clarify?
Yes, policy ENV2 relates to coastal areas, and it's in our existing adopted local plan, and it's also referred to in the officer's report. It is quite a difficult policy action, because we do, for example, we get applications for extensions and new builds and ancillary structures which actually conflict with a number of the points in that policy as well. I think the important thing is to consider the policy ENV2, consider the weighting in terms of the harm that you consider the proposal would relate to that policy, but also you do need to consider the development plan as a whole, and as well as the MPPF policies, and of course weighing that all up within the tilted balance, which is what's set out in the committee report.
So thank you. So we come back to the point, I think it's the development framework 11, isn't it, where it's basically talking about significantly and demonstrably, and we've got to weigh that against the harm that Councillor Rivingale is pointing out, and we have to give weight to the need to supply housing because of the tilted balance. So can officers offer a viewpoint on whether that threshold is met?
Do you mean whether the conflict with the MV2 is significant and demonstrable enough to outweigh the tilted balance?
Okay. Yes, I do.
Okay. I mean, as Lucy said, we've got to consider the plan as a whole, not just based on one policy. But I have acknowledged there is, and Councillor Rippingale, there is conflict with it. But we also do need to acknowledge that all statutory consultees that also included people to do with this policy, ecologists and landscape, place as well, they have no objections subject to conditions. So we do have to add that into the weight as well, that there are conditions to mitigate identified impact, not just on this policy, but as the plan as a whole.
Okay, but do the committee feel that we're still talking in abstract here, or are we getting down to demonstrably showing that it isn't significantly and demonstrably impactful and therefore outweighs the tilted balance? Because that, my understanding is that's the threshold. Could we have some advice, please?
I'll offer my view, Chair. The tilted balance is exactly that. It almost reverses the normal scheme of things. So in terms of the weight which you have to give to the provision of new homes, that is very substantial indeed. Now, there is normally a range of policies within the plan that a scheme is in compliance with or in conflict with. ENV4 is a policy which still, ENV2 still attracts, is still live and attracts full weight. Part 2 of the plan, section 2 of the plan is not out of date. However, is the conflict you identify with that policy sufficient to outweigh the tilted balance in all of itself? And I would say not in our opinion, and hence the recommendation of approval. And as Daniel has outlined, landscape experts have not recommended refusal on landscape grounds, and it's primarily a landscape-led policy.
Thank you. So, Councillor Rippingale, is there anything more demonstrable coming out of those reports that you feel that, in what I pick up responding to you in the abstract, isn't really meeting the points that you're making? So given the policy, is there anything on the ground that you think is not being addressed by the officers saying that there isn't a case for it outweighing the tilted balance criteria?
I mean, for me, it goes back to the strategic biodiversity assessment, and I haven't had time to look into that, and I would like to understand why in that assessment we're saying it's harming the biodiversity, you know, and then we're saying, well, actually, no, that's okay. So for me, it's like, I don't feel like I have enough information, having just pulled up that biodiversity assessment, to make a decision.
Thank you. I mean, bear in mind that the agendas are going out a week before the meeting. We've all got time to read the agendas, to phone up the officers, to ask questions, to go along to a briefing, to ask more in-depth questions. So the fact that we're pulling things up this evening suggests to me that we need to be more prepared if we want to ask questions that are demonstrable and get answers beyond abstract answers. So, Lucy, yes.
So I just wanted to come back just with some further information, because yes, you can identify harm, and if there is some potential harm to biodiversity, but it's also important to recognise that there would be mitigation measures as well. So in terms of the mitigation measures that would be secured, I'm just going to scroll through the conditions that are set out in the committee report related to landscape and ecology. So we have a series of conditions that would deal with arboricultural impact and securing a 10% uplift in on-site tree canopy cover, landscape management plan, tree protection plan. There's a construction environmental management plan, which means that there would be specific measures that would need to take place during the construction period. Wildlife sensitive lighting design scheme, habitat management and monitoring plan in respect of biodiversity net gain. There are a series of other ecological and biodiversity enhancement strategy would be conditioned as well. All the works would need to be carried out in accordance with the submitted ecological appraisal. There's also conditions relating to great crested newt, reptiles as well. So yes, there's elements of harm, but there's also mitigation that would alleviate and mitigate that harm as well, which needs to be taken into account also as part of the whole planning balance. So it's quite a detailed assessment, really.
Thank you. And then on top of that, we have the tilted balance, where you have to give significant weight to the need to provide housing supply. Are you happy with the response? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Davidson at this point.
Thank you, Chairman. A slightly different tack, I'm afraid. I'm concerned about Councillor Lilly's information about highways, in that he has, being a local Rowhedge boy, he knows more about that road than most of us. I agree with him that looking at the site today on the site visit, that existing post and rail along the Rowhedge Road does impede your view. And however large the bell mouth might be, you will not be able to see very well. And if there's speeding as well, that could enhance that risk of danger. What I wonder whether the committee and the planners might suggest or agree to have a condition added to the application to say that there should be no hedging, no fencing in the first 15 metres along the roadside. And the reason is for safety. And that's because Gladman have a reputation of going to appeal, whether it's a refusal or an acceptance. I just think that'd be a safety.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Yeah, and bringing in some of my past experience as a county councillor, you're right that I also spotted that we're moving an access further onto the bend. And you, given the nature of the road, you could well have agricultural vehicles moving along that road, and you will find that the time it takes for an agricultural vehicle to come into space where an oncoming driver can actually react is longer than if a car was actually coming down the road. So I do believe that is a valid point. Could I ask the officers to respond to that, bearing in mind that backing that up will be a tilted balance consideration?
Sorry, initially I'll just provide a little bit of further information for councillors' benefits. I'm looking at Essex Highway map data for this site and looking at particularly their road safety data and collision data, just to confirm there is collision data much further north as you're entering Old Heath Road, but there's no collision data. There's no records of any collisions at all on this section of Rowhedge Road for quite some distance. So just to provide you just with that little extra bit of information, I'll just pass to Dan in terms of information about the conditions.
Yeah, thank you. With regards to the fence that's there, there are landscape scheme conditions there. I don't think we would expect the fence that's currently there to either stay there or be replicated. There are landscape conditions that will mean the whole landscape scheme needs to come in hard and soft, and I would imagine that the frontage details would be dealt with within those, and we can again make sure it aligns with the access that highways have said is acceptable regarding visibility displays, but we wouldn't want any other landscaping scheme to come in and conflict with that, so we would ensure that there is good visibility retained.
So, just for clarity, Chairman, the officers will determine the hedging or fencing along the front of that site.
Thank you, but there are highway considerations here, and it's effectively a slow bend. I believe it's 40 mile per hour. So most highway authorities will have criteria about how far any hedging boundary should be set to maintain visibility. The additional point I'm raising is, given the nature of the road, you're likely to have agricultural vehicles on it, which are at slower speed, and it can cause greater conflict. So if you could bear that in mind with Councillor Davison's point, and to add it into, do you feel you can add it as a condition, or do you feel it's an informative?
The landscape details would come in at reserved matters. So, but what we could do is we could include an informative that would set out what our expectations would be in respect of landscape, and also we could also amend one of the conditions, Dan, to ask for further information at reserved matters stage to demonstrate visibility in relation to that landscape scheme as well, so that we have that further information and can consult highways on that basis as well.
Thank you. So I'll bring in Councillor Councillor McCarthy next. Could I just ask Simon? Right. No, okay, he's not. He's indicating he doesn't want to come in. Just to reiterate, if any deferral was to be made, and Councillor McCarthy is indicating he doesn't want to, we would run up against the deadline when the Secretary of State could then call in. No? Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, it's 150,000 house
Okay,
threshold.
thank you very much. So, given that, do you still wish?
Sorry, I didn't realise. I wasn't actually proposing a deferral. I was merely suggesting to Councillor Gocher that there is that opportunity, so rather than refusal.
Okay, Councillor Gocher, do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, Chair. Can I propose that we defer it until we have until you have sought the opinion of another ecologist on this? Is that a grounds for deferral?
Thank you.
I'll just ask the question.
Yeah, thank you. So what I would ask is that the officers give me advice on, because this goes against the recommendation, which is for approval. Does the proposal for deferral have to meet the 6 tests for material planning considerations?
I think, Chair, I'd sort of probably turn this on its head and say, what grounds do we have to seek a further ecological piece of advice, given that we have comprehensive and independent ecological advice that is clear and unequivocal in its recommendation to us? I'm not sure where it would take us to defer, given that we have used place services who have an acknowledged expertise and employ extremely experienced ecologists who provide us with advice regularly. I'm not sure what grounds we have to suggest that the advice we've received, as outlined by Lucy, is in any way inadequate.
Thank you. So what I think you've done there is you've wrapped all the 6 tests into one, and you've kind of thrown it back, and are asking Councillor Gocher to therefore tell us why a deferral is necessary, how it's relevant to planning, relevant to the development, being actually permitted, enforceable and precise and reasonable in all other respects.
Well, for a start, I'm not clear from the officers, from the committee, report, exactly whether these badges and badger sets have actually been properly considered, because obviously, as it's been explained, they weren't in there for understandable reasons. But I know from past experience that you sometimes get some very strange things said by some of these corporate ecologists. For example, I was at, and this was at Rowhedge as well by coincidence, an event surrounding Middlewick, where I was told by an MOD employed ecologist that you could move badger sets. I mean, that's not the case. So I'm a bit unclear about the position of the badgers. And secondly, I would have thought it would be an ecological consideration in terms of what is underneath that ground. Now, I know that there's 4 conditions surrounding the contaminated land, but it does seem that the cart is being put before the horse. How can we make a decision either on ecological grounds or on general human health grounds until we know the outcome of the things we're conditioning? It just seems that the whole thing is the wrong way around. Can I just ask a procedural question as well? I mean,
yes, of course.
If let's say this is approved, and then sometime in the not too distant future the new local plan is adopted, which, as we know, is unlikely to have designated this area for development. Does that have any impact on the decision made tonight? If it was to approve, could that? I'm presuming it couldn't kick in a reversal. But I'm just asking the question.
Thank you, Lucy. Can you answer the clarification, not the first bit, because I want to ask whether there's a seconder for the deferral. before I do that, I think.
So clarify the local plan procedure.
Yes, please.
Yes, so we can't, given that the local plan review is at such an early stage, as I said before, it doesn't carry any weight. We can't predict what it may or may not include as a result. It's essentially at quite an early draft. It's just gone to Reg 18 consultation. There's further consultation to take place. If this application were approved, it would effectively become what you might refer to as a committed development, and the local plan review would need to take that into account. So that would factor into our policy team's considerations for the local plan review. There wouldn't be a possibility to review the decision after the event, if that's essentially what you're asking. I do have some further comments on ecology and contamination, if and when you want me to answer them.
Let me first ask Councillor Tate whether her comments relate to the procedural or to the want to defer. So can I ask whether there's a seconder for the proposal of Councillor Goethe to defer this application? Okay, Councillor McCarthy seconded it, so Councillor Tate, would you like to make your views on the deferral?
I just don't see the point, if I'm entirely honest. It's late and I've come to my honesty point. I just worry that we are setting precedents here, that I know that we have to take each planning application on its own merits, but there's great concern for whether badgers may be there. I have no problem with badgers, and I just feel that we are being creative with this application when it has no merit or otherwise different to the one prior, apart from perhaps the ward in which it sits. And so I don't understand why we're deferring. For what? Why? We've already got an ecologist's view that we've been perfectly happy with up to now. So I am very unclear on the reasons why we're deferring.
Thank you. I suppose the opportunity to do so is probably one reason, because it falls below the 150 threshold. Lucy, you want to make further points?
Yes, just to provide some further points with regards to place services ecology. They are an independent consultant, essentially providing information and evidence for the council. So you have the applicant's ecologist, and they've submitted the initial information, and then we have the benefit of place services ecology reviewing that information on our behalf and advising us. Looking through their very detailed consultation response, they have, and I've referred to all of the documents and the considerations that they gave in general. In terms of protected species, they have specifically commented on bats, newts, reptiles, dormice, badgers as well. So they've commented on all of that. Information on badgers is kept sensitive because they are protected by law, but the place services ecology will have seen all of that information and have clearly assessed it and commented on it. With regards to works to badger sets, that does require a badger licence, which is via Natural England as well, so there is that extra layer of protection. With regards to contamination, there was a series of a phase 1 contamination report submitted with the application, which would have been assessed by our contaminated land officer. It does refer to previous uses on the site and areas where there are potential contaminants. Having considered the submitted information, the contaminated land officer is therefore satisfied that the land can be made suitable for the development proposed. Obviously not in its present state, there would be remediation required, and that's what's covered by the conditions that are recommended. Remediation on contamination could be relatively minor, it could be quite extensive, so that's what the condition would seek to secure appropriate mitigation to make the land suitable for the development that's been proposed.
Thank you. So, is there anyone else that wishes to comment or debate on the proposal to defer? Don't see anything. Could I ask the proposers and seconder, in view of the information you've heard around your request to defer, is it something you want to continue with, or are you both want to continue? Okay, well, I think in that point we probably need to put it to a vote, okay? So I ask all those in favour for deferral of this application, please show. All those against, please show. And can you please read the result out, Madeline?
3 to defer, 7 against.
So
Are
the
there any
defer-
abstentions?
any abstentions, sorry. So it's not adding up. So you want us to show again, do you? Right, please can we show again? All those in favour of the deferral, please show.
3.
Thank you. All those against, please show.
8.
Thank you. So that the motion to defer is lost. So therefore, do members wish to debate the proposal to approve any further, or do you wish to make a proposal to approve? Councillor Tate.
I'm happy to propose that we approve.
Is there a seconder for that, please? And Councillor, I've forgotten your name, sorry, Age. No, your name. Don't worry, you will also be my age at one point. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Calverley, thank you. So, therefore, it's been proposed and seconded to approve the proposal and the officer's recommendation. Please can I have a show of hands? Sorry, and Councillor Davison.
With the amended
you're waving at me, sorry.
Sorry, with the amended condition.
Right, with the amending condition and informatives. And just for clarity, let's get Madeline to tell us what they are. If not, we can ask one of the officers to do it. Yeah.
From my understanding, we can include some additional wording in our existing conditions that would require further information of visibility displays at reserved matters in respect of the landscape proposals, and we can also include an informative to set out our expectations with regards to the landscaping and visibility.
You're happy with that, Councillor Davison? Okay, right. So the proposal is to approve along with the conditions and informatives. All those in favour, please show.
Five, 4.
All those against, please show.
5 against.
Thank you. We are where we were before, so I will vote in favour of the officer's
Were there any
recommendation.
abstentions?
Any abstentions? Right, we are where we were with the previous proposal. I will vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. I thank all those that have attended on this item, and thank you, Councillor Lilly. So could I ask all those that have come for this item, if you wish to leave, you can do now. Thank you. So we move on to item 7.3, and we are discussing 5 King's Head Court, Colchester. And I can confirm a site visit took place earlier at Councillor Chuffalow's request, and can I invite Philip Morton to present a report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, everybody. Item 7.3 is variation or removal of condition 1, a temporary 2-year condition of application 241456 at 5 King's Head Court for the change of use from a C3 dwelling to a C2 residential institution for respite care up to 2 young persons to allow primary carers a break from their responsibilities. The temporary permission was applied by the planning committee to assess the impacts of the change of use. The application was called in by Councillor Kirkby-Taylor due to concerns of the neighbouring residents, the disruption already caused by the contractors parking and blocking turning point, and the failure to provide the required waste management plan. I'll just go through some slides to show you the site. This is a wider overview of the site and position of surrounding dwellings. Obviously it's in, you can see it in red, I hope, yeah, just about. This is an overhead view. Obviously you can clearly see the site. I've marked it with the cross. Then we move on to showing the access for the site from Serpentine Walk in both directions. And then we have a closer view of the access to Kingshead Court moving down the road. It's a gravel track that's unadopted by a highway authority. Then we have the slides showing 5 Kingshead Court itself, the turning head and the parking to the right and the left of the property. The temporary change of use was approved by this planning committee in December 24 and has been unable to take place as the applicant is unable to secure the required Ofsted registration for the C2 use without having a permanent permission in place. At this point, it should be noted that there have been further appeal decisions that are relevant to this application since this was previously heard at planning committee, where these appeals of a change of use from a C3 to a C2 have been allowed by the planning inspectorate. They have similar impacts to what is here, where the amenity and parking and highways impacts, and we refuse them on those grounds. The most recent decision, the inspector found the change of use to a C2 care home would be unlikely to cause a demonstrable change to the residential character of the area and would have an acceptable effect on the character of the area and the living conditions of neighbouring occupiers, having regard to parking, noise and disturbance. And it would therefore comply with local policies. This was also assessed on the basis that the change of use was to be on a permanent basis. This application seeks the removal of condition 1 for a temporary 2-year permission to make it permanent for the change of use of the dwelling house from a C3 residential to a C2 care home in order to enable the commencement of the C2 use. While in some cases there is merit to a temporary permission and the planning committee's reasoning behind the original condition had good intentions, in this instance it prevents the C2 use operating, and the circumstances of this case would be akin to refusal of the original planning permission. Consistent with the original recommendation, it's considered there will be no material harm anticipated upon neighbouring residential amenity or parking by the proposed use over and above what you could expect from the standard residential C3 use of a dwelling. Therefore, it's not considered that there are grounds to resist the removal of condition. Accordingly, the planning balance weighs in favour of the proposal, and accordingly the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. So I will now go to the speakers, and I will invite Clementine Saniolo to come and speak on behalf of the applicant. You have 3 minutes, and once the red light goes on, and the bell will go after 2. Thank you.
Good evening. I understand from the information shared that some neighbours raised concerns regarding work vans present at the property. The works carried out were necessary adaptation to the home, specifically converting the existing ensuite into a wet room. This was done to ensure the property meets health and safety requirements and is suitable for the vulnerable young people we intend to support. The property is being prepared for regulatory inspection, and the adaptations are intended to ensure the environment is safe, accessible, and appropriate for young people with additional needs. The works were internal improvements only and were carried out to meet safeguarding and care standards. Since purchasing the property, we've only undertaken necessary internal adaptations to prepare the home for its intended purpose. Unfortunately, the delays caused by the concerns raised have had an adverse impact on our business. However, our priority remains ensuring that the home is safe, compliant, and capable of providing a nurturing and supportive environment for vulnerable young people. I would also like to note that some interactions with neighbors have been very difficult. On one occasion, a neighbor made a comment suggesting that our kind would be disruptive in the area. I interpreted this as a reference to my background, which I found concerning. Despite this, we remain committed to being respectful members of the community and operating in a way that is responsible and considerate to those living nearby. Our intention is to create a safe, stable, and supportive home for vulnerable children, and we hope to work positively with the local community moving forward. We care for children with disabilities, complex needs, and we also support the families to have a break. Are we saying children with needs should not live in a normal house, in a community that everyone is? It could be your children, it could be my children. I just don't understand why people do oppose. There's parking, it's only 2 children. It's like a family. I might move in with 5 children. No one will move me out of my property because I've got 5 children with needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I now invite Councillor Kirby-Taylor to speak to the committee. You have 5 minutes, and once the red light comes on, and the bell will go off after 4.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I'll try and keep this as brief as I can, as it's the last item of the night. Condition was put in to determine if this business in this place would cause a disruption and a loss of amenity. The residents have reported a significant level of disruption from the work so far, so it should be a simple decision, especially given that Ofsted requiring stability is, as far as I'm aware, not a material planning consideration. I wish to raise more dramatically the increase in activity has given us a textbook example of the risks associated with the blocking of turning points. An ambulance with a heart attack victim within it could not turn around. In this case, fortunately, no life was lost, but emergency services vehicles being forced to reverse up that lane cost valuable minutes, and in many emergency cases, every second counts. It's been consistently demonstrated that the building works cannot exist with parking that is provided at that residence. And instead of the 2 vans of builders, the business plan calls for 3 nurses at all times, plus there will naturally be visits from management and guests. With those numbers, at shift switchover times, it would be reasonable to assume at least 4 vehicles, 2 more than we're already seeing blocking the turning points. And there could be as many as 8 vehicles present, 6 nurses, plus management, plus a guest. I'd like to point out that the lack of objection from highways is based on the principle that the turning point would be unaffected if they were consulted on a plan where that turning point is replaced with 2 parking spaces, which is the de facto situation. Their response would be significantly different. Yes, we require residential care facilities, that is not in question. But this is simply not a suitable location. The civil law covenants on this property prohibiting business use, which this business already breaches, but the neighbours do not currently have the resources to enforce, were put in place for a good reason. If the applicant wishes to use this property for her business, then perhaps a rest area for off-shift nurses at one of her other nearby care facilities would be a better use. But demonstrable risks to the lives of residents is not a price we should be willing to pay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going Sorry, I'm looking in my notes. Yeah, so I'm going to invite members of the committee to ask any questions and to discuss and debate the proposal. Councillor Spindler.
I'd like to thank the officers for letting us view this property, so we had a better understanding of it. And when visiting the site, there's the garage space, there's parking in front of the garage, there's 2 parking facilities at the side of the property, so that's 4 vehicles that I could see. As for the turning, my suggestion was to reduce the greenage at the front to give a better view at the front door, and to allow a better access of turning. And I believe also it was suggested by one of us to make it better wheelchair access to the front of the property, so that access could go along the path in front of the property rather than round the greenage to the front door. That would then make it a lot easier to approve the planning permission.
Thank you. Councillor Goetsch.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is what we're deciding tonight is whether to lift the condition that the committee placed on the development, that it would be for a trial period. And I mean, the reason it was conditioned is because I mean, you have to balance with these kind of things. There's clearly a social need for provision of homes for children with special needs, and we're all conscious of that. But at the same time, because of the concerns about the location, and that's the key issue, location, not the principle of these kinds of developments, that's why it was conditioned. And it seems to be that this has come back because of an issue created by another external body, Halstead, which I am very familiar with through my work as a teacher. But that's not our issue. Our issue is whether there are significant concerns about the location, the impact on visiting vehicles, like we've heard about the ambulance, and I have read the application documents recently, and I've visited the site in my own capacity, not on the official visit. I'm concerned that we would be reversing a previous decision to let's see how this pans out. Which is why it was made a contemporary decision in the first place, or condition in the first place. And I would have thought that had something been conditioned like that, during any building works, the applicant would have made very sure that any contractors there were on their very best behaviour, because that would then indicate how things might then progress when it goes into the temporary period. I read, when I go on the this application to read the documents to prepare for this meeting, a string of comments from people nearby, residents, saying that they have not been on their best behaviour. And what that flags up with me is a red flag that should we remove the condition and just make this a permanent thing, then this kind of behaviour will continue. That's my concern. That we've already kind of had a little trial period in a sense, which has clearly, in the eyes of the people who live nearby, not worked. So why would we as a committee then remove a condition that we as a committee have previously decided to put on, in terms of let's have a temporary trial period and see whether there are any problems?
Thank you, Councillor Goetsch. I have Councillor Rippingau.
Yeah, I just wanted to track back to Councillor Kirkby-Taylor's comment about the covenant and to understand if there's been a covenant on the building from business. I just want a bit more clarity on that situation.
Okay, I don't see anyone else. Oh, Councillor Davison.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Yep, a lot of sympathy for the need for this facility, but having been to the site today, I'm not convinced that this is the best place for it, even though it has got permission. Also, not only are we concerned about disturbance, I'd like to ask the officers what support that the other residents could have from the council to minimise any disturbance if we lift this restriction. But I also note that, of course, they haven't got a residue or a waste plan in place either, and there's no reason why they couldn't have done that already. So everything points as if they look as if they're difficult customers to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, we've heard the speakers and we've heard our members' concerns. So, Philip, can you please address them?
Yep, I'll try and address them. Any restricted covenants on land is a legal document. It goes with the title, and it's a civil matter between parties, and it's not something that we can deal with in planning. The landscaping, we can add a landscape condition if the committee would be minded to add that to make sure the turning head would be clearer. Any builders attending a property, whether it be to enable this use or any other use, so like a C3 use, there you would have the same issues. So it's not the fact that builders have been blocking the turning head is not something that is novel to this particular application with regards to the use that we're asking to approve. That could occur at any C3 use. That's equally with any C3 use has unrestricted parking. Anybody can go there, anybody can park anywhere. As part of this application, obviously we'll have conditioned the number of children. There's a management plan that we can enforce a condition on. So we have that further restriction than what you could expect possibly in a C3 use. Further to that, obviously it's regulated by Officer and they'll have, as an outside body, they'll be doing regular visits as well to make sure that it's following through with the care to the children. Obviously, the council has environmental services officers where complaints can be made, as well as planning enforcement if they believe there's a breaching condition with regards to this use. So that would be how the neighbours would be able to voice their complaints. Thank you. I don't think there's anything else.
I think Lucy wants to speak before I see whether you've answered them all.
Just wanted to come back with some further points of clarity and also to look at the condition that was previously approved. Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe the use has commenced on site. So reference to current impacts that are being experienced, just to clarify, that's not from the use itself, that's from other activities that are taking place on site, so it's not indicative of what impacts would result once the property was in use as proposed. Looking at the condition that was originally imposed regarding the temporary use and specifically the reason for why the committee wanted to impose that condition, it was to allow the council to review the acceptability of the proposal in light of any observations made over an initial period with regards to any impacts on the amenity of the area, and then it also goes on to state that this review is considered necessary in light of the particular circumstances of this case, including the constrained nature of the site, and in order to review the effectiveness of the proposed management plan. So members could consider whether, looking particularly at the constrained nature of the site, whether the suggestions made by Councillor Spindler would go a sufficient way to address those. In terms of the management plan, there would be a management plan that has been submitted and would be conditioned. It does include details of waste management. It doesn't include details of how residents might be able to contact the users, contact the operators, or how there might be any conflict resolution, etc. So members could consider that the condition is amended to require a further management plan to specifically address dealing with any concerns that neighbours might have. That would be reasonable to condition that in response to altering this specific time-limited condition, if members were so minded.
Thank you. So the issue about the reason we're being asked to remove temporary conditions is because of Ofsted's decision not to grant a licence, because there's no permanent planning permission, if that can be addressed. And I may have, my reasoning might not be right, but surely most sites that are going to require building works to make them be able to use for what the intention is, we do condition where contractors park, etc., etc. So are we saying that that wasn't in the original condition? And if it wasn't in the condition, and clearly Councillor Goetsch is reporting that people are complaining about the behaviour of contractors, is there anything we can do to help alleviate those concerns?
In answer to your first question, the answer is yes. They can't commence the use that we've permitted them for 2 years because they can't get registered with Ofsted to be able to commence the C2 use. With regard to contractor parking, we could put a condition on, if you were minded to approve, to require parking in certain places, not in the turning head, and that would be enforceable.
Okay, it just strikes me that, as Councillor Goetsch is pointing out, that there's people living down that access road, and access has to be available. If you need to get down in an emergency, if you've got time to wait for the contractor to be found, find the keys, get in the van, move it. So Councillor Goetsch, would you be happy with a condition relating to parking concerns?
Definitely, I think that condition needs to go in there.
Okay, and the issue over the Ofsted, so effectively, because we didn't either give full permission or refuse it and went for temporary condition, we are standing in the way of somebody operating according to the licence they're seeking.
Yeah, they can't commence the use, the C2 use that we've approved for 2 years.
Okay, so the question for us is whether that's a reasonable stance. I continue with that. Welcome any views on that, by all means state them. Councillor McLean, do you wish to say anything?
Yeah, I just find it hard to believe it didn't all go through on the first hearing, you know. I just think it's coming back to the table, and these people are needing the help, all the help they can get, and children. I think it's appalling.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
This one's like a pendulum. I think one thing, and then someone answers a question and I think another. We are just in a chicken and egg situation, aren't we? They can't do the purpose for which it's been intended. So we have to just take a punt, really. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to control builders on site. They are, you know, they are a law unto themselves. So then my thought process went to, oh, well, what are there any complaints from the users? No, because there are no users. I genuinely, for once in my life, have no idea what to do. So I shall pass on to someone else.
Councillor Riffingale.
I suppose the concern here, isn't it, is that relationships have deteriorated so much around this application, whether it would ever be sustainable now, which I know is not a material planning consideration. and we can mitigate as much as we want, but I feel like planning enforcement will be there. You know, if we put conditions in, they will be there constantly. So, my perspective, I don't see any reason to refuse it, and I do think there are conditions that we can mitigate, but I think the parties involved probably need to think about whether this is a sustainable situation in terms of relationships as well. But again, that's not a material planning.
Thank you. No, so in terms of our role is to make a decision on material planning conditions, not the weight of public opinion. And so, is there a proposal to accept the recommendation with the two conditions around landscaping and conditioning parking around the site? Sorry, Councillor Spinlay.
Yeah, I vote for that, yeah.
I'm happy to second it. I can.
With the waste management plan.
And the waste management plan. Lucy.
Sorry, just to confirm, there is a waste management plan included already. Did you want additional requirements for a management plan with regards to making sure that residents are aware of who they can contact with any issues, that kind of more residential amenity? Yep, okay, so you have...
That would make more sense.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Madeline, please sum up what it is we're being asked to agree.
I'm going to agree with additional conditions around landscaping to help turning and how neighbours might be able to contact people who actually run the establishment.
Are you all happy with that, or do you wish further clarification? Councillor Cavalier. Thank you. Councillor Gocher.
Just clarify what the condition is about the issue of parking and access.
We probably need an officer to give us detail on what that might look like.
We could condition further details to show a plan of that area, to show that resurfaced. So to remove the planting that Councillor Spindler referred to and show that surfaced as a turning area, and then we could approve that. Alternatively, if members were so minded, that the applicant could submit that now, and we could just condition that as, you shall commence in accordance with this drawing. But one way or the other, we could secure a plan that would show that area as a turning area, and for that landscaping element to be removed, to show it as hard standard.
And in terms of access, we don't want that driveway blocked.
Yeah, you could include in the condition that it should remain free and unencumbered, essentially, for perpetuity.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how that will be enforced.
You would have a trip point, so you would say that no occupation or no first use shall take place until that area has been altered in accordance with the approved plan.
Come back.
I mean, say all the alterations take place, but there are still multiple vehicles blocking the turning. How will that be dealt with?
I'm sorry, just before you come in, could you clarify about what, are you talking about residential use, once it's in use, or are you talking about contractors?
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking about once the building work's finished, but if the problem continues with behaviour from the staff and the people on site, so once it's actually in use.
Yeah, just before you answer that, could you also clarify that if this was residential use, are you likely to have the same issues that you're pointing out, because it's business use, may apply, and therefore how reasonable is it that you're asking for the business use to be conditioned, but if it's C3, you could have a family with 4 or 5 cars?
Yes, you're quite right. Currently, any of the properties down there could have multiple visitors, etc. Presumably they don't, because they're considerate, but yes, there could be. With the turning area, as I said, you could condition it that it needs to be amended or landscaped in hard surfaced, essentially in accordance with the plan. that turning area should remain free of any parking and should essentially remain for the purposes as a turning area. If there were then cars parking there, then that could be enforced against because it'd be used as a parking area as opposed to a turning area.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Gocha?
Yeah, that kind of answers my question, but I suppose I'm just wondering who would enforce it? Who would be the enforcer?
That would be our enforcement team. Sorry, planning enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposal. It's been proposed by Councillor Tate, seconded by me, to include the 3 conditions that we're talking about. It's been clarified what they are. I propose to put it to the vote. All those in favour, please show. And any against? Any abstentions? So can you read this?
10 for and 1 abstention.
Okay, members, we've had a good meeting. We've had three subjects tonight. Thank you all for your time and your attention. Thank you for the public and councillors for attending, and I close the meeting. Thank you.